Hey there Titans, and welcome back to another Titan Academy video. Today we'll be talking about run criteria in Titan Web. First, we'll show you what it means to conditionally trigger Salesforce actions based on input that your end user inserts into your web project. Next, we'll talk about the best times to use run criteria and use cases that make sense for using run criteria. And finally, we'll talk about some drawbacks of run criteria and why you might prefer to do this in a different way. Let's get started. So I've got a simple form here with a first name, last name, email, phone in order to create a contact, and an extra field here that will allow my user to give me additional information in order so that I can create a case. Now I only want to create a case if my end user actually fills in this field. Now there are a number of ways to do this, but one of the ways to do this is using something called run criteria. So let me show you what I've got set up on this push button right over here. And what I'm doing is I am running a push action to create a contact, and under that contact I want to create a case as a child to that contact. Now again, like I said, I only want to create this case if the end user fills out that text area explaining their experience. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a run criteria that will say that if this is not empty, if this field is not empty, then I want to run this push. Otherwise, don't run this push. And this will allow me to conditionally trigger this action or not. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that run criteria. Let's close, we'll save everything, and I'll show you an example. So we'll fill this out. We'll say, okay, and some email and some phone number. And in the first example, I will not fill out this field. I'll just run my push. And I'll head over to my integration logs. And as you can see, this only created a contact and it did not create a case in Salesforce. Now I'm going to run it again. I'm just going to change some details here. So we'll say like Paul and Ryan's. We'll leave the rest of this information. And now let's say it was very good. And we'll push this. And now if we head back to our integration logs, you'll notice that I have created a contact in Salesforce as well as a case in Salesforce. And again, that's just because we've set here run criteria to decide when to run that case push. Now, this can be really handy, but there are some drawbacks. So first of all, let's talk about when you would use this. In the use case that I've just outlined, you could use this. This would be one example. A better example would be anytime that you do payment integrations, and we have videos showing how to do payment integrations. You can set up different kinds of payment integrations in Titan Web, and this is a good example of when you would want to use run criteria. You might only want to push data from that payment if it was a successful payment. If that transaction actually went through, then you would want to run that push to Salesforce. So that's a typical use case for run criteria. In general, you can usually get away with not using the run criteria and instead running a condition in the action flow. So for example, I might run a push for a contact here, and after finish, make my condition say, if this field is not empty, then run my case push. And after this, I would run my case push. Now, this would be the, I would say, better way to normally handle a scenario like this. It allows you more flexibility. And one drawback that I would like to mention about using run criteria is that with run criteria, first of all, it's harder to debug and understand why certain things ran and why they didn't run. But also, every single time that a run criteria runs, it costs an API call. So that means that even in the event that I am not filling out this field in our example, and my case push in our example doesn't run, or the run criteria push doesn't run, that still would cost an API call. So a lot of times it's better to avoid that scenario and in general build out the condition within your action flow, but it is a handy tool and definitely worthwhile using under certain circumstances. And that's how it's done.